In this tutorial, we'll learn how to tube up paint. Tubing up paint is a way to save a color that you use quite often. As you mature as an artist and as your palette matures, you'll find that there are colors that you can't buy in an art store, colors that you use often, colors that you use for trees, for skies, for water, for rocks. So you end up having to mix your own color. You find yourself mixing these colors over and over and over again and using large quantities of this color that you like. So here's a way to mix a large quantity of paint of a particular color that you like and use, and of course save it. You're saving it in a tube and it becomes a tube of paint just like you use your other tubes of paint. Here's a color that I use for rocks that I've never been able to find in an art store. So I mix up large quantities of the color and tube it up. You start with these empty tubes of paint. You can purchase these empty tubes of paint from your art supply store. They're aluminum tubes that are empty. They have a cap on them and the back end is open. So you can mix paint, fill the tube with paint, and then fold up the back end of the paint and it becomes a tube of paint just like you buy in the store. Here's a tube that I've mixed that I call New Mexico Blue. Our skies in New Mexico are mostly cobalt blue with a little white, yellow, and red in them, and I use it often. So rather than mixing it every time I paint a sky, I tube it up like this, and then I can squeeze it out, and I've got my sky color. So we simply begin by mixing our color, and of course you want to mix enough to fill one of these medium-sized tubes of paint. This is a 40mm sized tube, and you just continue mixing until you have the quantity and the color that you want. So now I've mixed my color, I've mixed the quantity that I want, and my color matches exactly, as you can see, and I'm ready to tube up the paint. So take your empty tube of paint. I like to take the cap off when I begin so air bubbles don't end up in the top part of your tube, and then scoop the paint up like a spoon and start feeding it into the back of the tube, just like this. When the end of the tube gets filled up, you tap the front of the tube on your palette and it'll drive the paint down to the front part of the tube like this. You can see how the paint is pushed to the front part of the tube. And scoop up more paint, put it in the back end of the tube. Tap the tube against your palette again until paint starts coming out the front of the tube. Then I put the cap on. Tap it again and then begin putting more paint into the back of the tube. Anytime the back of the tube gets filled, you tap on it and the paint is forced to the front of the tube. This keeps bubbles out of your paint. Now when I use up all my paint, then I scrape the inside of the tube and tap the tube until the paint is compacted to the front of the tube. You can see that I'm only about 2/3 full. You need quite a bit of room in the back part of the tube so the paint doesn't squeeze out when you close the end of the tube. When you have all the paint in your tube, use a paper towel to wipe off the outside of the tube so the tube is clean when you start folding up the end of the tube. Then you squeeze the end of the tube shut. Again, use a paper towel to keep things clean so you don't get paint on your hands. After I squeeze the end of the tube, I like to take a pair of pliers and crimp the end of the tube about 1/8 of an inch in, like this. After I crimp the tube, I fold about 1/8 of an inch of the tube and then crimp it again with the pliers. Then I fold it again. Crimp it again. And the tube is complete. Then of course you need to mark the tube so you know what's in it. In this case, I'll put rocks. Now you have a tube of paint of a color that you use often, that you don't have to buy off the shelf. It's actually cheaper to make, the color's accurate, and it's always